Thank you guys very much for joining our webinar today. My name is Dr. Wayfwan, and for the last couple of years, I've gotten very passionate about what we call lifestyle health, metabolic health, and after stumbling on evidence that most of the chronic medical conditions that we face today are rooted in reversible metabolic dysfunction, I have made it my mission to inform as many people who are suffering from chronic medical issues that their diabetes, their blood pressure, their weight issues, their sleep apnea issues can all be reversed. So this talk is going to be talking just about that. And I'll ask a question. Can you put a value on your health? If you knew information that could take your health from this level to this level, will you act on that information? So I'm hoping that I can bring to light some information that will help you see your health in a different light and help you take action so you could reclaim your health again. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then we will start. Hmm, why is this not? Okay. Okay. Uh, let's do this. Okay, wonderful. So, as I said, I will introduce myself again. My name is Dr. Wayfwan. I hold board certifications in two fields. I'm a board certified internist as well as a board certified pediatrician. And today I'm going to be talking about our chronic medical conditions. We now have strong, convincing evidence that most of the chronic medical conditions that we face today are rooted in what we call metabolic dysfunction. So all our chronic diseases today come from what we call metabolic dysfunction. And what is metabolic dysfunction? Metabolic dysfunction is simply an energy deficient state. Metabolism is the way the body makes and uses energy. If your body is not able to make energy well or use energy well, we say you have metabolic dysfunction. So science now shows that sitting at the center of energy deficiency, metabolic dysfunction, are two things: insulin resistance and microbiome dysfunction. These two things cause the deficiency in energy that result in all the chronic medical conditions, that we face today. So I want to take us through, each of those individually and how they factor into the chronic medical conditions that we face. So let's start by talking about the first one, insulin resistance. To be able to understand how insulin resistance results in energy deficiency, metabolic dysfunction, it's important to understand what insulin is. Insulin is a hormone that is very important in our survival. It sits at the pinnacle, at the peak. It is the most important hormone dictating energy needs. It's like the CEO of a company that dictates the structure and functioning of the company. And why is insulin very important? Because of securing energy. The job of insulin, if I will say, is to do this. The job of insulin is to mobilize glucose out of the cell, to mobilize glucose out of the blood. When we eat, all the food that we eat is converted into glucose and released into the blood. The job of insulin is to mobilize that glucose out of the blood into the cell. When the glucose gets into the cell, what happens is the glucose is shunted into the mitochondria. And in the mitochondria, the glucose goes through a complex series of reactions called the electron transport chain to release an energy molecule called ATP. So when you think about ATP, I want you to think about energy. So insulin is very important because insulin secures energy. Why is energy important? Because every cell in our body requires energy. Cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up systems. The building unit of every system in our body is a cell, and every cell in the body requires energy to function. When a cell is not able to when a cell does not have the energy it needs to be able to carry out its function, the cell malfunctions. And a simple definition for disease is a malfunctioning cell. And why does the cell malfunction? Because it lacks the energy that it needs to be able to it lacks the energy that it needs to be able to function well. So that is what insulin does. So what then is insulin resistance? Oh, I'm sorry, what happened here? This guy. Sorry, I don't know what happened here. Okay, great. What then is insulin resistance, you may ask? Insulin resistance is when you have a breakdown in this process. Anywhere where there is a breakdown in the process of insulin mobilizing glucose out of the blood into the cell so that energy can be produced. Any breakdown in that process is insulin, is what we call insulin resistance. And as I said, every cell in the body requires energy to function. When it doesn't have energy, systems break down, the cell breaks down, tissue breaks down, system break down. Now, how do you develop insulin resistance? We develop insulin resistance. So this is just simple, a breakdown. It's important to understand how the breakdown occurs, because if you understand how the breakdown occurs, then you can understand how to fix it. If your car breaks down and you take it to the mechanic, the very first thing that the mechanic does is the mechanic has to run a diagnostic to try to understand how the breakdown of your car occurred. Once the mechanic understands how the breakdown occurred, then the mechanism is able to walk backwards to be able to fix the breakdown. Same thing. I want you guys to understand how the breakdown of insulin resistance occurs so that you understand how the breakdown can be fixed. We develop insulin resistance. The breakdown occurs in a two-step process. The very first step is what I call too much fat. When you have too much fat. That's the very first step. And the very first step then leads to the second step where we say too much insulin. So these two things, too much fat and too much insulin, result in the breakdown, insulin resistance. Now, fat is good, insulin is good, but too much of a good thing is a bad thing. We need fat. Our body relies on fat as an alternate source of energy when glucose levels are low. We switch to fat burning more during the nighttime when we're fasting, when our metabolic demand is lower and glucose levels are low. So we need fat, but too much fat is not good. Now, how do you get too much fat, you may ask? All the calories that we consume, any excess calories that our body that we take in, the body takes those excess calories and converts them into fat. The body is intelligent. It knows the amount of calories, the amount of energy it needs to function. Anything that is in excess, it converts that to fat. So any time we take in more calories than we're supposed to, excess is converted into fat. So you have a cell like this. The cell is normally supposed to look like this, but you have now embarked on what I call chronic overnutrition, and you're now consuming more calories than your body needs. Your body takes those excess calories and now converts them into fat and goes and lumps it into this cell. This cell is normally supposed to look like this, but now all the excess fat calories have been converted into fat, and your body decides that it's going to lump that excess fat in this cell because it doesn't know where else to put it. Now, this becomes a problem. Why? Because the job of this cell normally is to take up glucose from the blood. When you have glucose in the blood, right here, insulin comes and tells that cell, hey, I want you to take up glucose from the blood, and the cell takes up glucose from the blood. Now, you now have a cell that is filled with fat. When a cell is filled with fat, it now occupies the space that glucose will normally occupy in the cell. So when you have glucose in the blood now, and you have insulin comes and tells this cell, hey, I want you to take up this glucose that is in the blood. The cell tells insulin, I'm sorry, I don't have any room in the inn. Where do you really expect me to put glucose? I have no room in the inn. So the cell closes its doors to glucose, and rightly so, because there is no place in the inn for glucose to lay its head. And so glucose doesn't get into the cell, and that's a breakdown in the process. Remember, the job of insulin mobilize glucose into the cell so that energy can be produced. If glucose cannot get into the cell, energy cannot be produced. You have a breakdown, you have insulin resistance. So that's how too much fat causes you to have insulin resistance. And this cell right here, that is what I call a fat laden cell, is actually trying to protect itself from too much energy. Glucose is energy. It's like this cell is acting like somebody on Thanksgiving who has eaten too much and they feel so full. They regret, they're grossed out at how full they are. And if you have ever eaten too much on Thanksgiving, the last thing in the world that you're thinking of is to put in a bite of any other thing. Even if that any other thing is your favorite thing in the world, that's the last thing you want to do. That's the way this cell is feeling. This cell feels so Thanksgiving full. The last thing in the world is to bring in glucose. So it tells insulin no, and glucose accumulates in the blood, and that glucose cannot be shunted through the mitochondria to produce energy. So that's one way in which you develop insulin resistance. The other way in which you develop insulin resistance is too much insulin. As I said, too much fat results in too much insulin. The first breakdown causes the second breakdown. It's like a little bit of a cascade. First breakdown now results in the second. How does too much fat result in too much insulin? One thing I want you guys to understand is that there is a one-to-one relationship between the concentration of glucose in the blood and the amount of insulin that is produced by the pancreas. When glucose concentration in the blood is high, the pancreas is going to produce a high amount of insulin. So you now have this cell that is fat laden or pregnant with fat, and it's not able to take up glucose from the blood. Glucose now accumulates in the blood. That glucose accumulates in the blood because that cell has no place to take up glucose. Okay. Now, as glucose accumulates in the blood because of the one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin, what happens is it triggers the pancreas to produce a high amount of insulin, too much insulin, too much insulin. And too much insulin is no bueno. Why is too much insulin no bueno? Too much insulin is no bueno because too much insulin acts as a tyrant, act as a bully. Remember, I started this talk by saying insulin is the number one hormone, very critical in our existence because it is like the CEO of the company that dictates the structure of the company. So imagine you have a boss, a CEO, very important personality, sits right there at the tip, at the pinnacle, dictating the structure of the company, the functioning. And one day that CEO comes to work and he has gone off. He's gone crazy. He's backing unreasonable orders. He's being a tyrant. He's, talking to people rudely, giving unreasonable demands and just yelling at his employees here and there. You know what happens? The employees of that CEO will lose respect for that kind of behavior. They lose respect for that kind of behavior. And when the employees lose respect for the CEO is not able to have the influence on the employees that he will normally have. So the employees are likely not going to, fall in place to the CEO. Imagine you have a boss and the boss, becomes, you don't respect that boss. Is it hard or easy for you to do what that boss tells you to do? Even if you were to do it, you may not give it your all. If your boss comes to you and you don't respect them, you've lost respect for them, and they tell you, hey, Dr. Kenny, I have this project that is going on that we need to have it turned in the next 30 days. But can you give me your all to get it in the next 30 days? Because Dr. Kenny has lost respect for me, He may get the project done at the 30-day mark, but instead of giving me 100% of his effort, he may do a lousy job and give 20% just to get that project done. It's the same thing with the cell. When you have too much insulin running around in the cell, that too much insulin is that CEO who has gone off, who is acting cuckoo, who is giving unreasonable demands to the cell, yelling at the cell, shoving the cell, and the cells lose their respect for insulin. When the cell loses its respect for insulin, it makes it hard for the cell to do what insulin asks it to do. And what's the number one thing that insulin asks the cell to do? Knock, knock, open your doors, let glucose in. So if the cell now has lost its respect for insulin, when insulin says, knock, knock, open your doors, let glucose in, the loss of respect causes the cell not to open its doors. When the cell doesn't open its door because it has lost respect for too much insulin acting tyrannical, more glucose accumulates in the blood. When more glucose accumulates in the blood, like this, what happens? Because there is a one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin secretion, it triggers the pancreas to produce even more insulin. And that is even more no bueno. Uh, that is even more no bueno because, as if the boss who had gone crazy had not been crazy enough, he raises his crazy level from this level of being cuckoo to now this level of being cuckoo. The employees lose even further respect for the CEO. If they had lost a certain degree, they lose even more respect. The cells in this case lose even more respect for insulin. And as if their doors were not clamped shut enough, the cells clamp their doors shut even more. More glucose accumulates in the blood. And it's just a vicious cycle, back and forth, back and forth. So that's how you develop insulin resistance in the two-step process. And when you have insulin resistance, it results in a slew of diseases. High blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, obesity, neuropathy, migraines, what have you. Unfortunately, guys, this slide is not exhaustive. Unfortunately, I cannot find a slide that will fit all the diseases in the world that are related to insulin resistance. And trust me, there are many. Why? Insulin signaling is that CEO of the boss that dictates the structure of everything. When you have insulin resistance and abnormal signaling of insulin, it permeates and affects every cell of the body. And so it's implicated in every chronic disease you can think of. Now, that's it. The other issue is dysbiosis. We mentioned dysbiosis, which is what we call microbiome dysfunction. It's also implicated in energy deficiency. To be able to explain what dysbiosis is, first, I want to explain to us what the microbiome is. Our microbiome, right here, all these things here that you see, microorganisms, are a population of 100 to 300 trillion bacteria that live in our large intestine. That's the microbiome. 300 to 30 to 100 trillion bacteria that live in our intestine. And they perform several different functions. They help to break down fiber. They help to protect the gut from pathogenic bacteria. When you hear pathogenic, it just simply means disease-causing bacteria. And the way they do that is by producing a very special fatty acid we call a short-chain fatty acid. A short-chain fatty acid is security to the gut. It goes and beefs up the walls of the colon to strengthen the integrity, to keep it strong. The cells of the colon are bind to each other and are attached to each other, by an area here called the tight junction, cell to cell, cell to cell. You think about this place in my knuckles as the tight junction. These short chain fatty acids we're talking about here go and maintain the tightness. They're like a security checkpoint so that you do not develop a weakness in the wall of the colon that will now cause bacteria to seep in through that weakness. They also help to regulate the immune system. You may not be aware of this, but 70% of our body's immune system, 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut, in the gut. So when the microbiome is unhealthy, this it trains the immune system in an unhealthy way. When the microbiome is healthy, it trains the immune system in a healthy way. What does a healthy training look like? What does an unhealthy training look like? A healthy training of the immune system looks like this. Hey, you see that bacteria right there? That's a bad dude. When you see him come around, pull out this AK, take him out. You see that other bacteria there is a bad dude, but he doesn't need an AK. You can just, for him, his special one is a grenade. Use this grenade to take him out. Hey, you see that other cell right there? It may look like a bacteria, but it's not a bacteria. Don't touch it. This is part of the body cells. It may have a little structure that may look like bacteria, but that's one of us. Don't try to shoot it. That's healthy training that the microbiome will give the immune system when the microbiome is healthy. An unhealthy training is this. Hey, you see that bacteria right there? He's a bad dude. When you see him, take him out. Hey, you see this other cell right here? It has a little thing that looks like a bacteria. Just shoot first, ask questions later. Just take it out, ask questions later. So it may be a cell of the body that is not a bacteria, but has a little structure that may look like a bacteria. The immune system has been trained that you see something that even just looks like a bacteria, you shoot first, you ask questions later. And that's how autoimmune diseases develop when the immune system is trained in an unhealthy way by an unhealthy microbiome. And the last thing that this 30 to 100 trillion bacteria do for us is that they help in synthesizing B vitamins and K vitamins. Now, we're supposed to live in symbiosis with this organism. Symbiosis means we do for them, they do for us. What we do for them is we provide them food and shelter. What they do for us is all these functions. So, what then is dysbiosis? Dysbiosis is when you have another name for it, microbiome dysfunction. It's when you have an imbalance in the bacteria population. You see, the population is they're supposed to exist in equilibrium. The good bacteria at this level, the bad bacteria at this level, sitting in equilibrium. Dysbiosis, when we say you have dysbiosis, the bad bacteria proliferate, outnumber the good bacteria, and the good bacteria go low. That imbalance is what we call dysbiosis. And when you have imbalance, all of these functions of the microbiome are compromised. When all of these functions of the microbiome are compromised, it results in a slew of illnesses from a poor gut. You should not be surprised now to see all these autoimmune diseases here because the immune system has been trained in an unhealthy way. It now has a trigger happy finger. It shoots first before it asks questions later, attacking the cells of the body, causing autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's, like lupus, like MS, like celiac. All those are autoimmune diseases. The other things here, I like to highlight anxiety and depression. Many of you may be surprised, but that anxiety and depression is linked to the gut. Why is that? You may not know it, but 90% of the body's serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that maintains our mood, 90% of that is produced in the gut. 90%. The other 10% of it is produced in the central nervous system, the brain, the other 10%. So imagine if your gut is not healthy and the factory is down and you're relying on 90% production of serotonin by the gut. It makes total sense that you will have anxiety and depression. For the purpose of time, I cannot go through all of this, but the point I'm trying to make here is that an unhealthy gut can trigger you to have a slew of diseases, as a result. Now, another slide that I want to show us here is, this slide, I call it the metabolic sequence of inflammation. When you have insulin resistance, is going to result in metabolic dysfunction. That metabolic dysfunction, energy deficiency, is going to result in injury to the cell. That injury to the cell triggers the immune system to deploy an inflammatory response. It causes inflammation. And normally, a normal inflammation is like a campfire. The campfire comes on, it takes care of the problem that it needs to take care of, it burns out and is gone. That's what a normal inflammatory response should be. But when you have insulin resistance, the inflammation turns on and doesn't turn off. It's like you now have chronic inflammation, and that chronic inflammation is like a slow burning fire inside you. The fire never turns off. And instead of that fire being protective, short campfire inflammation should be protective to take care of the issue. But in chronic inflammation, the fire never turns off. When the fire never turns off, it just continues to burn. Instead of it having a protect effect now, it starts damaging the cells that it was meant to protect. Your lungs, your arteries, your joints, you develop heart disease, you develop arthritis and what have you. Insulin resistance resulting in metabolic dysfunction, injury, oxidative stress, inflammation that is turned on and not turned off, and that results in the diseases or the symptoms that we have. The good news is that we now have strong metabolic evidence or strong scientific evidence that if you were to reverse the insulin resistance, which resulted in energy deficiency and the dysbiosis, you could reverse the chronic medical condition. And I like to put it this way. If you have a car and you were driving that car on the road and that car ran out of energy, the car stops. When the car stops working, it's like a cell that has stopped working. A cell that has stopped working, a malfunctioning cell, is equals to disease. The car has stopped working not because there's intrinsic failure of your engine. No. The reason it has stopped working is because there is an energy deficiency. You do not have gas in your tank to power that engine. If you were to walk to the gas station, buy gas, go back to your car on the side of the road, pump gas into that car, and go back and sit in the driver's seat and turn on the ignition, you hear the beautiful sound. Gene, gene. The car has life again. The car has life again. Why? Because its problem was not intrinsic failure of the engine. Its problem was energy. You restore that energy, the car roars back to life again. So it is with the body. Insulin resistance and dysbiosis, starve the body of the energy that the body needs to be able to operate. And in the lack of energy, you have these disease states. When you reverse the energy deficiency, just like that car roared back to life again, those diseases go away. And that should be good news. And I want to present to you guys a solution. This is a solution which is a nutraceutical product, which is called the Feel Great System, made by a company called Unicity. This feel great system is made up of two things. It's made up of a tea called the Unimate and a fiber product called Balance. And for those of you who are in the medical field here, you may be a pharmacist, a nurse, or a physician, or what have you, any kind of medical training. You'll be interested to know that this is listed in the physician's desk reference, the PDL. Now let's talk about these two things. Let's isolate number one, Unimate. It's made from a plant that is native to South America, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina. This plant is very rich in a very special phytonutrient called chlorogenic acid. So let's talk about how this impacts and causes a reversal of insulin resistance. So the Unimate plant is rich in this phytonutrient called chlorogenic acid. What chlorogenic acid does is that chlorogenic acid fosters a biological process called lipolysis, which is just simply a fancy term to say fat burning, to burn fat. Okay. Now, if you remember how we developed insulin resistance, the first step in which we developed insulin resistance was too much fat. Too much fat. Now, when you have chlorogenic acid consumption with consuming the Unimate, what it does is it goes and starts reversing the first step of insulin resistance. How does it do that? Remember, you had this cell that was filled with fat, like that. The cell was filled with fat, could not take up glucose from the blood. Glucose accumulated in the blood. That was the first step in insulin resistance. Glucose accumulated in the blood. You now take the Unimate product, which contains chlorogenic acid, which causes lipolysis, fat burning. So this cell now, when lipolysis occurs, this cell may transform to looking like this, and then later transform to looking back to normal where it is free, it has no fat in it. Lipolysis has freed the cell of the fat that made it unable to take in glucose. Now, when this cell is now free, it can now take in all this glucose into the blood, thereby restoring that process of glucose from the blood entering into the cell so that energy can be produced, reversing the first step in insulin resistance. Now, if you remember, the first step of insulin resistance resulted in the second step of insulin resistance. Too much fat resulted in too much insulin. When you had too much fat in this cell, the cell did not open its doors to glucose. Glucose accumulated in the blood. The accumulation of glucose in the blood was a trigger for the pancreas to produce too much insulin. Too much insulin was that CEO that had gone crazy, okay, cuckoo, and the cells had lost respect for it. Now, once lipolysis occurs and this cell now looks like that, glucose enters the blood, glucose enters the cell. The concentration of glucose in the blood that was high now drops to low. The concentration of glucose now drops to low. When the concentration of glucose now drops to low, one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin secretion. So insulin secretion by the pancreas goes from too much to low. A low insulin is like that boss who had initially gone cuckoo, who now comes to his employees and say, hey guys, I know I've been a jerk for the last 1 or 2 months, coming to work, yelling at people, being rude, giving unreasonable demands and shoving you here and there. I know I've really been a jerk. Will you forgive me, please? Let's start over. If I'm an employee and my boss comes to me and tells me that, and I had lost respect for the boss, that is so humbling. It makes me immediately gain my respect back for the boss. I say, yeah, boss man, I forgive you. We can work together again. So when insulin becomes low, it has dropped its tyrannical voice and regains the respect of the cell. When it regains the respect of the cell that had clamped its doors closed now has open arms to insulin. I can work with you now. You're now reasonable, you're now level-headed. So that's how that reverses insulin resistance, the Unimate product. The second product is the balance. Balance is fiber. Fiber is also very important in our metabolic health. Fiber does exactly the same thing that this slide does. It helps in lipolysis and reverses the first two steps, the first and second step of insulin resistance, exactly the same way. The second thing that fiber does is that fiber decreases our glycemic index. And when you have a low glycemic index, it causes you to have a low amount of insulin to be produced. How does that happen? Let's say you and I went to a restaurant to eat lasagna. And, I know a thing about fiber. I know that this product contains fiber. This product is made up of fiber from 5 different plants blended together in a 7 times polysaccharide matrix. I know that when I eat fiber, it's going to decrease my glycemic index. Why does it do that? This is what fiber does. Fiber, first of all, is one of those carbohydrates that is not digestible by man. We do not have the enzymes to be able to digest fiber to obtain any caloric value from it. So fiber, the job of fiber is to slow the transit of food through the colon. So if food is supposed to move through the colon by this speed, fiber causes food to move through the colon by this speed. The fast transit of food through the colon means fast absorption. Fast absorption means a very fast release of glucose into the blood. Fast. A slow transit of food through the colon means slow absorption. Slow absorption means a slow release of glucose into the blood. Okay? Now, going back to this, you and I at a restaurant, we're eating lasagna. I know a thing or two about fiber. I know a thing about the balanced product. You eat your lasagna, you do not consume any fiber, you do not take in the balanced product. This is what your blood sugar is going to do. Fiber, a lack of fiber, fast transit of food, fast release of glucose into the blood. Your blood sugar may be a blood sugar of 180 right here. Well, for me, I know a thing or two about the balanced product. I know it's rich in fiber. I know fiber is going to slow the transit of food through my colon, and by so doing, will decrease absorption and slow the release of glucose into the blood. So I consume the balanced product, and then I take the same plate of lasagna that you're eating. I eat the same quantity. My blood sugar is going to do this. And the peak of that blood sugar may be 90. You and I have eaten the same plate of lasagna, but because I have had the benefit of fiber, it has blunted the spike in my blood sugar, and so I have a lower blood sugar. Why is that significant? That is significant for this reason. When you produce one-to-one relationship between glucose production and insulin secretion, because your blood sugar has gone up to 180, your pancreas is going to have to produce a commensurate higher amount of insulin to deal with this blood sugar 180. Your pancreas may produce 20 units of insulin right here. For me, because my blood sugar has only gone up to 90, my pancreas is going to have to produce a commensurate lower amount of insulin to deal with that blood sugar. And for me, my pancreas may decide to produce 5 units of insulin. Why is that important? I want you to think about 20 units of insulin as high. High insulin is a tyrant, it's a bully, it's a CEO that has gone cuckoo. The cells are less likely to have respect for it to open its doors to insulin, to open its doors for glucose. Low insulin is like a CEO that is level headed, that the employees respect. The cells are going to respect it more. Huge, huge, huge implications. And one last thing, insulin is an anabolic hormone. It causes you to build, to store calories. So because you have produced 20 units of insulin and I produce 5 units of insulin, from this plate of lasagna, maybe you may gain 950 calories. For me, from this same plate of lasagna, I may only gain 400 calories. Big implications. So that's fiber and how important it is in our metabolic health. Unfortunately, we do not consume enough fiber. We do not consume enough fiber. And the last thing I will say, fiber also helps to reverse dysbiosis. As I said, we live in a symbiotic relationship with these organisms. We are supposed to provide them food and shelter, and they're supposed to do all these functions for us. The food for the microbiome for these organisms is fiber. And that's the reason, in my opinion, why God, our creator, made us humans to not be able to digest fiber, because it's food for this bacteria. Every organism, every living organism, be it a lion in the jungle of Africa or a bacteria in your gut, needs nutrients to survive. When they do not have the nutrients to survive, you have dysbiosis. When you have insufficient food, the strong bacteria, which are the bad bacteria, hoard the food, proliferate, and kick out the good bacteria. It causes that disbalance. So just by you simply giving the microbiome fiber, you reverse the imbalance in the microbiome, and you restore the equilibrium. Now, women and men are supposed to consume the National Institute of Health I said we don't consume enough fiber. The National Institute of Health recommends that if you're a man in the United States, you're supposed to consume at least 38 grams of fiber a day. If you're a woman in the United States, you're supposed to consume at least 25 grams of fiber a day. The NIH estimates that unfortunately we fall short by greater than 50%. The NIH estimates that the average man and woman in the US consumes 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day, whereas a woman is supposed to be consuming at least 25 grams and a man is supposed to be consuming at least 38 grams. But we are falling in this range. And if fiber is so important in our metabolic health, insulin resistance, as well as in our gut health, there is no doubt it makes sense now that these diseases are in proliferation because our foods are so processed. Now, I will end by saying this. The Feel Great system, this nutraceutical product, is a way to be able to reverse the insulin resistance and reverse the dysbiosis. And if we do so, just like that car that you were able to put energy back into it, gas into it, that started working again, your diseases that were the result of the energy deficiency go away. And you can reclaim your health again. I'll end by saying this. If you had a time machine and had to go back 100 years, you're going to find that our ancestors did not know what diabetes was, or celiac was, or MS was, or colon cancer was, or CAD. They did not know what all these things were. Why? Because the manner in which they lived and ate, did not result in chronic overnutrition and gut dysbiosis that then caused these issues. Our modernization, the way we live now is the reason for all of our problems. Food is medicine, and we are consuming poor foods, which is causing us to have a slew of this. But you are now enlightened. There is hope. You can reverse those chronic medical conditions, whatever they may be, by restoring your energy deficiency using the mechanism that these two nutraceutical products are able to do. I want to thank you guys for listening, and I'm going to yield to Amory and stop sharing my screen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That is extremely helpful, Dr. Dieter, in walking through how the science works behind this. And what I want to do is just spend a few minutes showing you some proof of how well the system works. What does it mean when you use these two products in order to reverse dysbiosis and insulin resistance? So let me give you a couple examples, and I'm going to have a couple people as well sharing their specific experience. So this is our speaker, Dr. Dieter, and you wouldn't imagine that this person that you're seeing before you looked like this. Between this picture and this picture is when he discovered intermittent fasting. So this is 5 years of intermittent fasting and jogging a couple times a week. He's a busy physician working in the emergency room. And then he discovered this system with the two products. And this in the pink jacket is 2.5 months on the system. So you can see how he narrowed down and his body shape changed and his mood energy. And he wasn't able to do as much jogging as he was back in this phase. The next one I want to show you is Dr. Kenny, who we're going to have talk in just a moment, went from hospital bed, with some serious insulin resistant reactions. This first picture right here and this second picture, these are 32 days apart. This is how much your body can change when you're addressing insulin resistance and gut dysbiosis. It's very significant. These two pictures are 60 days apart. This is Kimberly Fletcher and how she was able to get the inflammation out of her face in the very short period of time. Sometimes when I post this picture, people say that this is not the same. This is not the same person you fabricated this picture. I'm telling you, we know this woman, Kimberly. This is in fact a real person, and these are her two pictures, 2 months apart. But let me warn you, there's a picture of a diabetic foot ulcer that shows you how serious this can be. We're going to get you a picture of Keith's after as well, but I want to tell you that he's completely healed this foot ulcer It was to a point. This is how serious diabetes can be. This is Keith, the person who did this. He's 54 years old. He has type 2 diabetes. He was diagnosed 25 years ago and in his 30s. And he had been on insulin 90% of that time. When he got the system, he died. He literally died in January for sepsis, had to be resuscitated, then was in the ICU, kidney shutdown. They were able to get him, revive him, bring him back to life. And in 2 days on the system, he got off of 108 units of insulin. This is after over 20 years, over 20 years of being a diabetic and on insulin. In 2 days, he did not need insulin anymore. And what he did was he combined the intermittent fasting and the fiber is all he did. So we see damage like this in nails, making a change. It's actually Scott's friend and not Scott. I want to show you about inflammation and detoxification with Unimate. This is both. This is both adult and child, I believe. So this is detoxification. This is Jesse. This is just Jesse. So you can see over 3 weeks how he got clean hands, clear hands from that. So we're seeing that. This is Angelita. She is a nurse practitioner in Texas, and she struggled primarily. You can see the change in her body here, but I want to talk a little bit about the mental health aspect of it, that Angelita had been on antidepressants for almost the last decade, struggling with fatigue. And you can see the change in her body, but you can't see she's smiling in both places. But here she was suffering a lot with anxiety, depression, and now she's completely med-free and doesn't require medications to deal with her anxiety. This is Jonathan Scott. He's an NFL player. He lost 50 pounds in 50 days. And what was so key for him was that he was able to get rid of psoriasis. This is a picture of another person's psoriasis. He had psoriasis all over the back of his head, his arms, and this is something that he had struggled with since he was a teenager. And within a couple months, he was able to become psoriasis free of this. And this is an example of someone actually showing their psoriasis. This is a woman that I know. She's 63 years old, has struggled with psoriasis her entire adult life. And this is a couple of months on the system. She added omega-3 capsules and then vitamin D as well to help clear it up. And this was the first time in her life that she has not been. This was completely painful, took up a lot of her attention. Reversing type 2 diabetes. And A1C is how diabetes is measured in the US and other countries. This is Rose. She's a nurse also in Texas, was able to bring her A1C from 14 down to 5.9, has continued to decrease that. This is Jimmy. He was in his 40s, very, very serious diabetic. He was able to reverse his diabetes, no more high blood pressure. IBS for the last 10 years of his life was resolved in 3 days. Acid reflux gone, migraines gone, insomnia gone, down 2 pant sizes and 2 shirt sizes, was able to get his mother-in-law off of diabetes medication, his mother off of diabetes medication, and his wife off of metformin for pre-diabetes. We're seeing more of this reversal of type 2 diabetes, an A1C of 14, now normal, reverse diabetes, normal blood sugar levels now, down 40 pounds, brain fog gone, aches and pains gone. He had retired and was not able to work on his boat. After he used this, now he can leap up and down. He's able to use his entire body in retirement, whereas before he had trouble getting up and down out of a chair. This is Dr. Marla. She, between this and this, 3.5 months, she shared with us, this was on a cruise in Europe. She needed a cane in this picture to walk up and down the stairs. And now she is an avid hiker with no cane, no help. She has really completely transformed her life. Brain fog gone, long COVID gone, some really significant differences. And one of the things when you lose weight and belly fat with this system, you don't end up with that hanging belly, which requires a $10,000 surgery to get rid of. You get to see the removal of this. This is another example of that visceral fat, that belly fat really being moved, seeing some significant changes. We have people losing over 100 pounds with the system. It's all natural with no side effects. And so someone could stay on this system. I've been using it for 3 years, no side effects. And you don't get tired of it. It's easy to use, easy to incorporate into your life. And then this final story, this is Shannon. She's little. She's like a little 5 foot 2 inches. She lost 65 pounds at 55. So this is into menopause and normalized her A1C after really a lifetime of struggling with blood glucose related issues. And I think it's Carol just looking for some questions out there that she's tried several different coming, nothing has worked. This one, a lot of people say this, like nothing worked for them. They've tried everything out there under the sun and nothing worked for them until they had this experience. I'm gonna call one of my colleagues here. Dr. Tiffany is a physician board certified physician, also here where we live in the same city. Dr. Tiffany, would you mind sharing a little bit? I know you've been on a speaking engagement all weekend long, and we appreciate that, getting out to the masses. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and why a doctor would join us in sharing what it is we're doing here?
Oh, yes, definitely. I am so excited. Can you hear me okay? I had to put on some earpods. I'm in a hotel. Okay, look. So I'm just a doctor who got tired of writing prescriptions. That may sound crazy because a lot of times that's what you think we all love to do. But most of us got into medicine because we want to help people. We want to see people healthier. And after practicing for 20 years, I'm a double board certified physician in family medicine, did private practice, did urgent care, did telemedicine. The last 3 years, I was taking care of people across 48 states. So I got to see just how sick we are and how many times we're on a prescription for the symptoms, for the side effects, and now we have drug interactions. So yeah, I didn't want to keep doing that. I wanted to find a way to help people be healthier. And I literally just started getting on social media talking about the lifestyle changes that I learned with lifestyle medicine. And next thing I know, I'm being introduced to these products by this lady over here. And it became a way to transition patients who weren't ready to make a change. I've been talking and doing speaking engagements where so many people are married to their medicines and feel like they have to be on them forever and they don't see a way out. Nothing has worked out and their mindset does not believe that they can actually be better. So once you have something to help them transition, get them to figure out that they can do this, it changes everything. So I took the products. I was able to get off of my blood pressure medicine. I was able to see my waist come in. Who doesn't love that, right? I was able to help my brother go from the ICU, his second time in ICU, people, and be able to get off his insulin, his Trulicity, his metformin. That did it for me. And now I've been able to help more people I don't even know. And it's changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And we're seeing some people that I also wanted to bring in too. Dr. Festus, if you're able to share, you're a pharmacist, doctor of pharmacy. And can you talk about your specific experience that you have had with your sleep apnea and energy mood that's been able to help you in your practice?
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Dr. Dita. Thank you, Dr. Tiffany. Um, um, I am so happy to have discovered this. That Dr. Dita brought this to me. When I joined this initially was because I heard that it could help me with my sleep apnea. That was the first reason why I actually bought the product. And then when I bought the product, I realized that when I started it immediately, I realized that the coffee that I used to drink, because I used to go through like cans of espresso every day at work before I could make up the day, But I actually, ever since I started taking this, I didn't have to. I've not taken any coffee at all. Now, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea in 2013. And back then, it was very challenging for me. I had to be had like a CPAP machine. I just couldn't help with that. I had that for about 6 months. Then I found out that about this Aura appliance from a dentist that I could get from a dentist. It was about $2,000, and I got that. I have been using that since then for almost 12 years now. That I have been using the Aura appliance. This is something like this, almost like dentures. So you wait, it's hard for someone to tell. but it corrects your sleep apnea. So I've been wearing that for 12 years. If I did not wear this Aura appliance, I actually I'll sleep just quickly because I'm tired, but I won't last long. I'll get up, I'll be very tired. I'll snore all through. I'll get up with my hands numb and extremely tired, and it'll be difficult for me to go back to bed. So usually I don't end up sleeping. Maximum if I sleep 3 hours, that's really good. Now, I have to raise the pillows very high. I will snore a lot. Then I'll get up in the morning. I'll be extremely exhausted. Now, I want to say that it is. I have to stop. I cannot stop talking about this product to people. I'm not usually the person who wants to talk about a product so much to people or protocol, but this has touched me in a different place because for the past 4 months, going to 5 months now, I have not needed to put my Aura appliance in my mouth. And I sleep like a baby. I sleep very well. I don't need to raise the pillows as I usually, need to raise. I don't, I wake up, I'm energized, ready to go. Literally, I work 14 hours every day and
Yeah.
I'm energized.
And you need
Like,
to be focused. What you do can make a difference for people's lives, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to have focus and not be drinking espresso all day, exhausted through your day. And now you have that.
Yes, yes. Now I used to have to go through espressos many cans a day before I make that 14 hours. But now I don't need to. I don't actually drink. I don't drink any caffeine product. I just sip this throughout the day and I'm vitally going. Like
Yeah.
my brain is kicking, my energy is just something else. My mood and happiness, having to deal with patients at the pharmacy, it is just very radiating to people who come across. So thank you very much.
Yeah, the joy that it brings. Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Festus. We really, really appreciate that. Both him and his wife are doctors and have been sharing. There's a Dr. Kenny is here. I showed his before and after picture. I wanted to talk a little bit about PCOS and show you a picture of Dr. Kenny's wife, 20 years with PCOS, reversed in 2.5 months. I want to talk a little bit more about what that means. And then this is baby Sam. This is not my child. I'm 51, so I was holding someone else's small child, and the child that I'm holding is a mom that was diagnosed with PCOS when she was 18 years old. At 28, she was not able to conceive. So multiple miscarriages, a lot of intervention, was not able to conceive a child. 4 months on this system, she finally got pregnant, held the baby, and we got to hold baby Sam when I was in Texas. So we're seeing these miracles that just come from plants in this system, which is incredible. Dr. Kenny, could you share a little bit more?
Yeah, so my wife, I mean, we were probably told maybe 15 years ago, maybe longer. We were trying to get pregnant for about 6, 7 years, couldn't get, it was 7 years, couldn't get pregnant. My wife was told by a naturopath doctor that she had insulin resistance, but it was kind of glossed over. It was like you don't find very few people on this planet that even knows what this is, even fewer that can explain it, like Dr. Dieter just did, and and Dr. Tiffany. And so we just kind of glossed over it, didn't know, and just kept going through. My wife had every classic sign of insulin resistance. She would wake up in the morning. She had to eat within 30 minutes. Is what they tell you to do. And then she had to graze all day long. She would get headaches and hypoglycemia and blurred vision if she didn't. She could not fast. And it was 7 years for us to get pregnant. We finally did. And we had a couple miscarriages afterwards. And when I saw the connection in this, I just started teaching everybody that I could, just like Dr. Festus said, right? And it's just, I've now seen this happen with so many customers that I have on this and other people. But, Dr. Tiffany said something, and, Dr. Tiffany, I said, I know you were talking about, hey, I want to get people off meds. Were you ever able to get people off medication like you are now, Dr. Tiffany, using this protocol, Dr. Dieter?
Not nearly.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, it's just fascinating, isn't it? I mean, like, it sounds ludicrous, honest to God. But when I talk to my friends that are physicians like you or other physicians, I'm like, you can look this up in the physician's desk reference. There's a 90-day money back guarantee. Have you ever seen a med like that? And they're like, huh. And the results don't lie. So when I saw this, I knew I needed to share with everyone that would listen. And I mean, I've got 70 and 80-year-olds reaching out to me that are waking up with morning erections, guys. They're like, I mean, literally just got one a week ago of a guy's like, I haven't woke up this since I was like in high school. We hear this all the time. It's all related to insulin and gut dysbiosis. And this protocol reverses insulin resistance. It detoxes the liver and it feeds the gut. And I've seen thousands of people I personally have on this protocol around the world. And as long as they open the box, it works. So thank you
Mhm.
for letting me share, but
Yeah, thank you so much.
it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, yeah. Josephine says, I love baby Sam and mom Chelsea. If you have any questions that we can help to answer, there's some people that are typing in the chat about their experience, just confirming that they also had an experience getting off of their CPAP machine and being able to sleep, which is a very, very big deal. So we absolutely appreciate them weighing in. Uh, as we want to wrap up, if you have any questions and you want to type them in the chat, we would be happy to address them here. If you have something else that you need, kidney. Okay, so can you share how this helps with kidney disease? Yeah, let me just see real quick if we have. I don't think we have Troy Hatch on tonight, but we can.
I
Dr.
can put it in the chat if you want to watch the video.
Yeah, let's do that. I think that would be great. Yeah, testimonies on
Children. Somebody's asking about children.
Mhm.
My daughter uses it. You just don't have children fasting. I have a gentleman, he's a chiro up in Wisconsin. They do blood work in his clinic through a medical doctor. And they had a little boy with mass. It was really pretty severe gut dysbiosis, rashes all over his skin. They started giving the little guy, he had teeth. And so I always kind of explained to my patients, look, if a baby has teeth, they're starting to, have food. They can take in food, right? Till then, I would recommend breast milk, right? And this little guy he's doing awesome with it. So his gut's been able to heal and he's not had the issues. So it's safe, it's food.
Amazing. We
There
do
you
have
go.
a picture. We don't have a lot of pictures of kids because parents aren't necessarily excited to share them. We do have permission to share this young boy. This is about 3 months apart that he was able to just use the system. It's easy. We don't have him fast. He was able to, go to school with all of his friends like normal and still slim down. With my son, I have a 9-year-old, and in his water bottle that he takes to school, we just mix the Unimate in there, and he sips on Unimate throughout the day in his water bottle, and we've noticed concentration and improvement there. There's a question to you about Lyme disease. Katrina is not on, but we can share a little bit. Dr. Kenny, you want
Lime, I've got another video I can post there for him. This is another little guy too, Emery. And then, yeah, I can put in, I've got a good friend
Yeah.
of mine. If you would like me,
Could
I
you
can
could
go
you
ahead. I'm
speak
sorry.
to the Lyme disease a little bit for this person to
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
so
And
they
I'd be happy to share it. So a good friend of mine, God bless her, man. Her name's Dr. Abby. And she was, they told her that she had a brain tumor. And then later on, they told her she had MS. She was getting heart palpitations so bad, couldn't drive, blurred vision. And her hands were so inflammatory, she'd run them under hot water to be able to take care of her practice members. And she wrote goodbye letters to her kids. And I mean, within, I don't even honestly think it was a month, maybe 2 months on the protocol, 95% of her symptoms are gone. I don't think she's taken any medications anymore. But I have a complete video I can put in here, but it's all gut, like Dr. Dieter was speaking about. So this, when you control insulin and then you control, the gut and feed the gut properly, guys, it's amazing what can start to happen. So,
hmm And we
see,
are seeing with Lyme disease, the Lyme disease symptoms really mirror a lot of the insulin resistant symptoms, and it's hard to know which is which these people are suffering. What we have found is that when you use a system and you get the inflammation down, people with Lyme disease are seeing a lot of relief with the brain fog. They're getting a lot more clarity and just overall feeling better with that inflammation all over their body, doing better.
yeah, and
There's
autoimmune, right? Autoimmune, ladies and gentlemen, it works the same way as Dr. Dieter explained in every case. They just name it after the tissue that the body is attacking. So
Mhm.
Dr. Kenny, do you
Yes.
or Sue have a text, not a picture of Bill the Sue? Somebody is
Oh,
asking
yeah.
her to
Yes.
explain
Yes,
the
I do.
effect,
Yeah. Yeah.
explain
I'll
the
pull it up right
effect
now,
of
brother.
Alzheimer's dementia.
Yeah, the
Yeah. This
dementia that
is,
Builder Sue
this
was
is Dr.
Builder Sue, they were getting ready to, her kids were getting ready to put her in an institution because she was not able to do some of the basic cognitive activities in her day.
Yeah.
She-
This is her coming up. And this is 3 months apart. Same grandbaby on the in both
Mhm.
pictures. And Sue told me, she goes, she literally had she was taking all the grandkids for one last hoorah, she said, to the Great Wolf Lodge. She had chronic inflammation throughout her body and joints, so the brain doesn't have pain receptors, so you don't necessarily feel pain in the brain. But she was forgetting people's names she knew for 40 years. She was really concerned about herself, and this is 3 months apart. That's the same human being, and she was down 30 pounds here, memory serves. She's down 45 now, no longer headed to the nursing home. My mother has renal cell carcinoma. I put her on this immediately, and her kidney function improved from 23 to 56% within just a few months. She dropped a couple pant sizes, but more importantly, her mental clarity is back. I felt the same way as Sue's daughter. I was like, God, do I have to look at putting my mother into a place at one point and just completely transform my mom? So,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and whoever admin is, just to add to that about explain the effect of Alzheimer's dementia. So the brain uses 80% of the body's glucose. So even though the brain weighs only about 2 grams, 80% of the body's glucose is used by the brain. So the brain is the most energy dependent organ of the body. So when insulin signaling is not working well, the brain is the most energy susceptible, the most prone to suffer because 80% of glucose is used by the brain. You need ATP to be able to form thoughts, synapses, nerve firings, and all that stuff. When you have a deficiency of energy and the brain is relying so much on that energy, your nerve impulses and firings and formation of thoughts and complex processes, all of that get jeopardized. By restoring that energy deficiency, those dementia symptoms get better. And that's what Sue was able to experience, who was about to head to a nursing home.
someone was asking Dr. Dieter if you like I had cardiac AFib. I no longer have AFib. I mean, I know Keith that was on here, the one that you showed the picture of Amory of his foot. He had AFib, it's gone. So someone was asking about heart palpitations.
Okay. Maybe Dr. Tiffany can take the question of I deal with many youths with appetite issue, depression, and executive challenge. I don't know exactly the if there is a question there or what. That's Leighton.
Tinnitus is insulin resistant in the ear. Someone's asking. I've seen that go away. I'm sure Dr. Tiffany, if you see, I've seen that go away in so many people.
Yeah,
My
that's
buddy
fine.
Gary, I'm so
Mhm.
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Tiffany.
Oh, no. I agree. I was trying to see that question because I was responding to questions in the chat is what I was doing. So that's why you asked.
Sorry. It's like, I
You
didn't
know,
mean to cut you off.
Dr. Tiffany works with a lot of people with heart palpitations, with AFib, and what she does. Dr. Tiffany, just can you walk through what you recommend, how to address
Oh,
that?
what I usually recommend is one, diluting. Now we're dealing with a natural caffeine, so that doesn't affect us the same. But the reality is, so many of us are freaked out about caffeine. Your doctors have told you over and over and over again, don't do it, right? And so some of that plays a role in some of these symptoms. It does. But if you dilute that, and what you'll be doing is doing maybe a half a packet in a bottle or a half a packet in 40 ounces, as opposed to doing one packet in 20 ounces, and sip on that for 3 to 4 hours. Sometimes I have them sip on that for the entire day, a half a packet, and then reevaluate. I actually had a patient with atrial fibrillation that was my patient who ended up using these products. And that was my concern as well, because it was early in me learning about these products. And I had her do that, and she did just fine. We did that for 3 or 4 days. After that, we started putting her on one packet in 40 ounces. After that, we started putting her on one packet in 20 ounces, and she was able to do the regular dosage without symptoms.
That's a great example. Thank you. Dr.
Oh,
Dieter, there's some questions in there that I'm going to let you take.
yeah, I think EL Nadesh, could you Nadashe, she has her hand raised. If you could unmute her and just have a talk, and then I could answer these questions.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi,
How do you say your name?
Nadasi.
Nadasi. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. I did type it in there. What my question is I was diagnosed in 2010 with Raynaud's, scleroderma, and later they said I had CREST syndrome, and then interstitial lung disease, and the latest diagnosis was pulmonary hypertension, dyspepsia, and bursitis, and it just seems like my body just keeps attacking itself. And so I'm wondering, well, I'm also on, excuse me, I'm also on Uptravi, uh, ambrisentan, Klonopin, from having major panic attacks on the highway. Also, tadalafil. So I'm on and Lasix, furosemide. So I'm on these medications, and I've been on them for some of them longer than others. But the latest diagnosis, I've been on the heavier medications, and of course they're telling me that I'm gonna need to take this for the rest of my life because the pulmonary hypertension and the interstitial lung disease ultimately causes heart failure, and that's what typically causes, uh, causes death. So
Okay.
I started on a plant-based diet to help with things, but I'm still moving through the process, and I'm wondering how this protocol can actually shift all of these things that I'm going through or have been going through.
Okay. I'm going to answer that, and then I'm going to shift to Dr. Tiffany to add anything. So a lot of the things that you have said are linked to exactly what we discussed in this. So that should be good news to you. Very good news that should tickle your ears. Your symptoms, Raynaud's scleroderma is an autoimmune disease. Autoimmune diseases come from gut dysbiosis, okay? Interstitial lung disease is a chronic inflammatory state coming from insulin resistance, even linked with dysbiosis. Remember when I showed the slide about chronic inflammation? Chronic inflammation is like a slow burning fire inside your body. It just continues to burn and burn and burn and causes destruction of stuff. So the pulmonary hypertension is the result of the interstitial lung disease. The interstitial lung disease is coming from it's the interstitial lung disease is coming from the chronic inflammatory state. And this biosis, as well as insulin resistance, result in chronic inflammation. The fire has been turned off, turned on, and never turned off, and never turned on and never turned off. If we turn off that fire, you're going to have improvement in those symptoms, and those symptoms will even disappear. As simple as that. It may sound wild, but it's back to the simple analogy I was talking about of restoring a gas to the car, and those symptoms go away. So the things you spoke about, I hear huge autoimmune disease in there, dysbiosis as well as insulin resistance. Those two things are working together against your body and has caused a chronic inflammatory state. Your body is just on fire. Your lungs are just on fire. If we quell that chronic inflammatory state by reversing the dysbiosis and insulin resistance, you will be amazed that you will reclaim your health again.
I'm only
Tiffany,
115. I'm only 115 pounds, Dr. Dieter, so I don't need to lose any weight like I've seen a lot of people.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm already tiny. I'm
Oh,
small.
I love your question. We'd
Yeah.
love to address that. Let's talk about that.
It's not
yeah,
weight
Dr.
loss.
Tiffany, yeah. Mhm.
Yes, and you know what? I'm so excited you got on this call because we spent time together this weekend. And I love how Dr. Dieter just echoes a lot of the things we already talked about. But I'm going to say something else to add this little piece. The chronic inflammation that comes with the insulin resistance, it screws with our immune system. Those T cells don't know what they're attacking. So when you're having that dysbiosis, when you're having that leaky gut, and those things are leaking out, your body is now attacking not just those things, but you. And so that's how this autoimmune becomes an issue. And so, yep, we went into full detail on that. So I'm glad Dr. Dieter came and backed this up because that's what we're seeing. And that's why we're seeing people with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and my mom with MS. We're seeing improvements in that front when the medications aren't doing it. And I love it. And the weight loss, of course, you don't have to lose weight. Your body attacks what you need. It's amazing how our bodies are just that smart. And there's ways to actually make sure you're eating the things you need to eat. One, maybe not fasting as long, but there's ways to work this out to where it is it's for you. I mean, that's why you have a coach. That's why you link up with someone to find what's going to work for you and start there.
Okay, thank you.
We have,
Sure.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
no problem. We have somebody else who has their hand raised, admin. Maybe
Yeah.
yeah, not can we have them talk?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much for the opportunity.
Can you
And
tell
I'm
us your name, please?
Dr. Owen Roberts.
Okay.
And
Yes.
yes,
Definitely. Thank
I
you.
have a situation that I am trying to understand from your presentation. And by the way, thank you for the presentation and to all of the persons. I'm going to be 70 in about a few months, but I have been a lifestyle living and eating in a certain way from I was age 15. I have not had any flesh. I have been on a very natural fiber diet, and of course, a vegan, and end up having prostate cancer.
Mhm.
In addition to that, I am also living in an experience where there's a Alzheimer's dementia situation. And so I've heard so many things because I realized for a long while that it could be related to some type of inflammation. And I've been researching and understanding what's going on. But I'm somewhat puzzled because of my lifestyle, my exercise, the way I've lived my life as much as stress-free as I can, and ending up with the kind of illness that I'm dealing with in my own personal life as well as individuals also in my life. And so I want to understand if it's any association with what you have talked about, Dr. Dieter. And of course, how can I get those products? Because I've been trying everything and anything from a natural standpoint.
Okay.
And I still need to understand how do I get some assistance to get cure. Thank you very much for your response.
All right, thank you so much. And you said your name was Robert O.
No, Owen Roberts.
Owen Roberts.
Dr. Owen Roberts.
Dr. Owen Roberts. Dr. Owen, thank you for your question. So I'm going to address, the things you've mentioned, and if I leave out something, please, my panel, bring that up, or Dr. Tiffany can chime in. We have seen people who, so insulin resistance presents in different ways in different body types. Dysbiosis presents in different ways in different body types. You do not have to be overweight, or you do not have to look like, oh, this guy looks unhealthy to have dysbiosis or to have insulin resistance. So to answer the question about, exercise, health, and what have you. In fact, I used to live a very active exercise life and still had insulin resistance. So you do not have to have a certain kind of physique or look or what have you to have those things, insulin resistance and dysbiosis. So I say that to say that is still very possible with a slim physique, that you could have those issues in play. Now, to speak to the prostate and to speak to the dementia, prostate cancer is very strongly linked to insulin resistance, energy deficiency. When you think about insulin resistance, think about energy deficiency. There are processes in our body that are meant to be able to help correct mutations in our bodies. There's a constant DNA damage in our body because our DNA is constantly being our DNA strand is constantly being unwound and wound, unwound and wound. There are mutations that could arise in our DNA, and those mutations normally are supposed to be repaired by checks and balances in our bodies that cause DNA repair when there's a mutation. When you have a deficiency of energy, to repair DNA, you need energy. Every function in the body, everything that the cell needs to do, needs to pay for that with energy. So when there's an energy deficiency because of insulin resistance or dysbiosis, you do not have enough energy to pay for that DNA repair. That DNA repair then propagates into a cancer. Prostate cancer, a lot of adult diseases, including prostate cancer, are driven by insulin resistance. So, if you were to go online and look up, is prostate cancer related to insulin resistance, and Google or ChatGPT or any of the AI, it's going to give you a good essay on how prostate cancer and insulin resistance are linked. And I'll just end by reinforcing the issue of Alzheimer's dementia. Our brains need 80% of glucose. 80%. When we do not have adequate insulin signaling to be able to ensure that our brain can have the adequate amount of glucose so that the cells function to make energy, you will have that. So without knowing much more, and just knowing what we know about now, there are many, what I would say is that there are many other causes of dementia. It depends on, some people have dementia because of vascular dementia. So some people have dementia because, but many of these causes are all linked to insulin resistance. So even without knowing the specifics of what your dementia could be, I could say with a fair degree of certainty that sitting at the core is insulin signaling, resulting in glucose not being provided to the cells of the brain well enough so that energy can be produced for things to flow. And in regards to, will these products help you? These products will help address all those things. Now, I don't know what the stage of your prostate cancer is, and I'm not going to say here, oh, doc, this is going to cure your prostate cancer. I can't say that. But what I can say is that because insulin resistance is the mechanism that fuels prostate cancer, by quelling that insulin resistance, by giving it a 1-2 punch, serious punch, you knock off the legs, of what it relies on to continue to thrive. So what that means is, by addressing your insulin resistance, it's going to improve the outcome of your prostate cancer. Now, lastly, in terms of where you're going to get the product, somebody invited you to this call. So whoever invited you to this Zoom call, who gave you this link, just reach out to that person. They can give you information on how to get the product. If I left out anything, or if you have any follow questions, I'll let Dr. Tiffany, add.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
No, I think you did that very well.
Yes, I think, do we want to take one more question? We need to wrap it up. We're at 8:30 now.
Trying to
there-
come he's over here.
there's one more question from Joy. Joy, if you'd like to unmute, you have the ability to unmute. And then just kind of reiterating, so these are plant-based products. It's not a medication. Yes, you do want to increase your water intakes. Multiple questions on POTS. Do either one of you want to discuss POTS?
I actually did put a response back in there. So that's a dysautonomic issue, meaning your autonomic nervous system isn't functioning the way it should. One thing about having high insulin is it actually worsens the whole sympathetic nervous system response. It's when you stand up, your heart rate goes up. The reality is there isn't a lot of medications that treat this or make you feel better. So it becomes, is it worth trying for 90 days? Now, if you lower the insulin, you're going to lower that over sympathetic response. And so that can actually help just with understanding that. But there's 90 days to try this product out when you know good and well the medications you're on aren't really helping you, you're feeling miserable.
Yeah, you know what? We would love for someone who does have POTS to use this for 90 days and get back to us so that we have an experience and we can better speak to it. Personally, I don't know anyone who has POTS that used it that has written up their experience yet, but we'd love to have you do it. Thank you. It's great. Joy, you're
Okay.
able to get off
Yes,
mute. Go ahead,
Yes,
Joy.
I'm on mute. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can, Joy.
Okay. So I drink like a 64-ounce bottle of water every day. And I have high cholesterol, but this not the medication, but the supplement that is given, or you guys are speaking about, it's if you purchase it, you know that the money will be removing every month or every 3 months, I think. I'm not sure.
It's
But
a monthly, so it's $5 a day to use the system. And then that includes 3 packets. So let's say you use 2 of the concentrated yerba mates a day, it's about $1.70 per packet. It
okay,
gives
all
you
right.
in a monthly supply. So in the United States, it's $159 per month.
All right. So it's a monthly supply. Okay, understand that. Now, I have issue with caffeine. I will not be taking the packet every day, a full dose. I might be taking a half or a third of it. So I know I won't finish the packet monthly. How can I speak to someone about not having the money take out monthly and have it take out every other month? Because I know I'm not going to be using the product monthly
Yeah, so a
because it's
couple
got to be
things.
broken down.
Sure. There's 2 things I want to address. One is that the customer service of the manufacturer will totally handle
Sorry,
that.
I didn't get that. Can you repeat?
Customer service of the manufacturer will totally handle that for you. So if you
Okay.
have a subscription, you save money, but you'll get a message like 5 days before your next shipment is about to go out, and you can just make an adjustment to it. So if you have a lot of the Unimate left because you're only taking 1 a day, you can make an adjustment to that. Another thing that I often do with someone who's worried about caffeine is I have them do 1 Unimate and then 2 of the balance. So 2 fibers, and you might want to start you can start your subscription that way. 1 Unimate, and then you take a fiber with each meal so that you can really ramp up on gut health, but ease into caffeine, ease into the Unimate. I was extremely caffeine sensitive when I first started this system. This was 3 years ago now. And just over time, I'm like right now it's 8:30 my time. I can drink this and it won't keep me up.
Wow.
Now I won't have any trouble, but I was very caffeine sensitive when I first started, which seems to be related to metabolic issues, being extremely sensitive to caffeine like that. So as you get your insulin resistance, you get your metabolic state more normalized, many people find that they aren't as sensitive to caffeine as they were before. That's a great question. Thank you so much.
Okay. I appreciate your answer. Thank you so much. And I
Yeah.
will speak to the person who introduced me to the product. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for getting on.
Great. So, if we could wrap up now, Mary, if you don't mind, I will close us. Thank you guys very much for being here. Our mission is to educate many more people, about the possibility of living disease-free. So we do this 3 times a week on Sundays, Mondays, and Fridays. We're going to be doing the same call tomorrow at the same time, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, using the same Zoom link. If you attended this today for the first time, you have a friend, a neighbor, a family member, what have you, who you think may benefit from listening to this just as you benefited, please give them an invite to join us. And the last thing too is we are looking for more people to join us on this mission. We do not have enough people telling the world or telling America, that our diseases that we face today can be reversible. So the more people we have promoting this, the more people we have talking about this, the more people we have extending their hands and extending their sphere of influence, the more we can reach people to help save their lives, or to help restore their health. So if you have listened to this information and it interests you in any way, and you are interested in partnering with us, to be able to educate the masses, more and more people, to shine a light that diseases can be reversible, please reach out to whoever invited you. We will love as many people to join our team as possible to help people reclaim their health. Thank you very, very much for joining us. And we look forward to working with you if you're one of those people who this resonates with you, the mission to help people be medication free. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Good night and see you tomorrow.